All right. So let's read the verse, finish up the verses for that.
Can I add something before you say?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think for us to fully understand what's going to happen in the world, you have to understand Revelation, because when it talks about the demons that do this and that, you won't see a demon on TV saying, "We're reporting here now. We're going to put plagues on people." You're not going to see that. The world's not going to report that. So you have to be able to see what's going on in the world and understand they're spinning it one way. And you have to realize, oh, that's what they're saying is going on, but the scriptures say this is what's really going on, and here's where we're at. So to me, to understand things as they come about, we need to have an understanding of what the Revelation says. So when it does come about, we're like, okay, I know what's going on. I know what's going on.
And you're saying exactly what Jesus said, and Paul says, like, look for these signs, because when you see it, and then and Paul goes on to say, the unbeliever is going to be taken as a thief in the night, surprised. Right. The believer will not.
Right.
He's not going to be surprised when he's like, oh, I see those signs. Okay, it's getting ready. He ain't going to be, now there's going to, you remember the 10 virgins, 5 of them were surprised.
Right.
Well, they were all surprised, but 5 of them weren't ready.
Right.
Anyway, let's read verses 15 through the end of the chapter there. Then the 7th angel blew his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ. Don't let that sentence just don't read over it.
Kingdom come.
And he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders who sit on their thrones before God fell on their faces and worshiped God, saying, we give thanks to you, Lord God Almighty, who is and who was and have taken you great power and begun to reign. And the nations raged, but your wrath came, and the time for the dead to be judged, and for rewarding your servants, the prophets, and the saints, and those who fear your name, both small and great, and for destroying the destroyers of the earth. And then God's temple in heaven was opened, and the ark of his covenant seen within his temple. And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and heavy hail. So, the Revelation, the great earthquake, which is we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about how we can recognize some of this language. The point is trying to recognize this language. We're not trying to define, what does that exactly mean, the great earthquake. We just know it's a great earthquake. Does it affect the whole earth, or is it just part of the earth? We're really not going to talk about that part of it, because it looks like it's, we'll see. We'll go there. Okay. So in verse 13, if you look at it, it says, and at that hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell, and 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the rest were terrified and gave glory to God of heaven. So you guys, what you see there is you got, this is talking about Jerusalem, because the whole thing's been talking about Jerusalem. Everybody see that? Mm-hmm. Now, because what we're going to see here is I put in there, and I put in the text, is that there are 3 different earthquakes, including 4, if you include 11. So you got this one, you got one at 6:12. You got one at 16:18 and one at 8:5, I believe. It's the same. You can't have 4 great earthquakes. So as we've been saying, Revelation is a retelling. It's a reiteration of the same story, except told from a different perspective. And remember the 3 woes, we're into the second woe. And so this 2 witnesses and what happens to them, all of that is the second woe.
Can I say something?
Yep.
I used to think that it was like a bunch of different earthquakes. Well, maybe a couple years ago, I started thinking these are all the same earthquake, because not every earthquake that's going to happen is going to be that devastating.
Right.
So it's like,
Why would it be- we had 3 great earthquakes.
right. So it's all talking about the same one. And even reading ahead, in like maybe 15 or 16,
Yep.
and the bowls of wrath, well, they sound they are exactly
Yep.
the same things as the trumpets. So when you see the boils of those that didn't believe, well, that's the same thing that's happening with the trumpet judgments, is the same thing with the bowl judgments. It's all the same thing, just a different retelling. One with the trumpet, which is probably symbolic of something, and the bowl means wrath. So it's like, when you look at it, for me, when I look at it, like, okay, this is the same thing as this chapter, this is the same thing as this and this and this. It's not like you get sores and then later on,
You get sores again.
We're talking about the same sores.
Excellent observation, Travis.
It's like Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They tell
Yes.
parables, and a lot of them,
Exactly like
like the pelagic man, you can find in all 3 of them, and it's 3 points of view. Same thing in here. John is being given this at 3 times with 3 different points of view, and that's why it's bringing it up
Correct.
as well.
But if you don't understand that, for the years I thought it was like, okay, first there's going to be 7 seals, then after that,
Right.
7
Yeah.
trumpets, after that, 7 bowls.
Yeah.
That's not true. It's all mixed in there
Linear.
together.
You were
Yeah,
thinking
yeah, I was thinking linear. I was
linear.
like, okay, this will come first, then this will be this, then this will be these 3. But it's all together. Some of them overlap and are the same thing, and some are not.
Yeah.
You just
See, that's what I've always thought till just now.
correct. That's sort of what they.
Yeah.
It's sort of what's taught,
Yeah.
and because you read the first page of Revelation,
the way
and
they
it's-
think.
You're
it's the
reading
way
it
they
with a
think.
Western mind.
Exactly.
You're reading it linear. That's how you've been taught to read things.
Right.
Go ahead, Ken.
If you think back to Deuteronomy 28 and Moses' blessings and curses, the curses are 3 times longer than the blessings.
Yes.
But as you read through the curses are on that same loop that Travis is talking about.
Yeah.
So there's medical, there's financial, there's war, there's this, there's that. And then it repeats it all again in a slightly different context. Then it repeats it all again in slightly. So it's not like there's 15 types of medical problems. There's really 2.
Right.
He attacks your mental health and he keeps talking about the boils and some medical. But it's just the same stuff over and over and over again that then we're reading about now in action. Right?
Right.
I mean, it's
If you read
the same loop we always talk about.
those points of view, it does take health, and it does take our food, and it does affect our finances. That's the 3 points of views that if you're reading, you'll find.
You 3 have just done
Good stuff.
what we're saying they did. Different points of view. We're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
And it wouldn't hurt if you read the other 65 books.
Well, I don't think you can understand it without reading.
There you go.
And I mean, that's the whole point of us going through Revelation is, one, most people in here haven't really read it or studied it, and they have. It's been a very confusing, book. But at the very beginning, Jesus says, I want you to understand what I'm revealing to you, which means we have the capacity. But if you understand that it's all centered back in the Old Testament, it's very, very, then you can start interpreting it, and it's more helpful that way instead of, helicopters flying around with Stinger missiles flying. That's not what this is saying. So, anyway.
When do we get to that?
We've already gone through it.
Hang on a second.
Go back and read
Is it a
again.
different app?
You have to go to a different property teacher.
You gotta pay for the expanded version on
I
the
see.
Bible app.
I see.
You got it.
Them 3 guys on Channel 14, they
Yeah.
are heavy into that.
Yeah, I just heard Bill Salas this morning on Prophecy Watcher talking about that, and I was like, oh my God.
How do you even watch that?
I like to listen to other people.
Okay.
I'm not just rigid.
Oh, I like to listen to those I like to hear this far out stuff.
Yeah.
I listen to it because it's like,
Yeah,
see
I
what
can
the
discern
thing.
what's what.
Right. I mean, yeah.
It's no worse than going to the movie theaters and watching.
Well, that's
I say
true.
it's a better way to entertain yourself. I think it's
It's
a
a
better
good
form of
point,
entertainment.
Clarence. It's a really good.
And plus, when people ask you, about those sort of things, you at
That's
least have
right.
an understanding of what they're
coming
saying.
from.
Like, oh, let me explain. So, the last paragraph down there. So then, God then breathed life into the two witnesses, and they stood on their feet. Great fear fell on those who witnessed them rise. You can imagine why, being there for 3.5 days.
Yeah.
The witnesses are commanded to come up here. This is the word ascend, same one that Jesus was ascending. And it says, as their enemies watched. So I don't know if that means that it's going to be on TV and everyone's going to witness it. Maybe,
Oh, you got your cell phone.
or your cell phone, whatever.
Yeah, cell phone.
However you want, you're
Facebook Live.
The homeless are doing this.
on the internet.
Okay.
So
Is that-
I
That
kind of
means
think
the
that
whole
the
world
whole
will see
world
it
will
then,
see
right?
it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Clarence.
They made an instruction, David Jeremiah made this, that the cameras will be focused upon these courts for 3.5 days. Reason why 3.5 days, back in the old days with Jesus, 2 days and 3, but they extended it now. You can live 3 days as saying you were dead, but 4 days you cannot. So the 3.5, you're extended into the 4th day. So for it is impossible you come back alive that long. That's why it was the 3.5 days, showing that God is beyond the impossible. But the cameras will be up on the courts, so everybody will see, and then all of a sudden they'll give up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's for humiliation because the people who are going to be in charge then, it's going to be, these two guys gave us so much trouble for 1,260 days, and we want them to basically rot out there. They're not, and then they're shocked when they come to life again.
Yeah, I sort of thought too that like in Islam, you have to bury a body pretty quick.
Same thing with the Jews.
Right, you gotta bury a body quick or it's
Yep.
bad. So they will leave your enemies out there
Yeah.
to as form of. Now you're not getting to heaven because you weren't buried properly or
Right,
whatever,
right.
whatever.
That's what David, when he went back after the hand of Saul and his children,
So let's,
reunited, it's just showing that the tradition of the belief.
Right.
Let's look at some of these other earthquakes in Revelation. And so, chapter 6 of Revelation, remember when he says, when he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake. Revelation 8:5. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake.
And I believe that is the very last earthquake when Christ returns.
So I think the great earthquake is when Christ returns.
Right.
Yeah, and I think this is a great earthquake too. Even though it doesn't say great earthquake, and you'll see why here in a minute. Because you see the language here, Revelation 16:18. And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a great earthquake. Same exact language as 8:5, except it doesn't say great. Again, remember, think Hebrew logic. We want in our Western minds, if it doesn't say great, then it ain't part of it. That kind of thing. You got to get out of that thinking.
I don't think that way. I don't think it has to match up. I'm just telling you what I just don't. Sorry, that was a kind of a loud, that I was thinking out loud there, so.
No, that's fine.
Kind of got away from me.
So, but you see what I'm saying? How
Yeah.
it matches up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's obviously in my head, it's the same great
That's the way
earthquake.
that's the way my head works.
Yeah.
I guess is what.
But I'm telling you, a lot of people don't think like that.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
That's a big thing that changed, that I've realized Daniel was saying, I thought that way until just right now. I mean, that's something that has kind of changed for me is going through this, is that what I've realized in Revelation, each chapter sometimes kind of is like the whole story. And then it starts over in the next chapter with different details. And
Yeah, I wouldn't say each chapter but they're,
Yeah, it's not
there's gonna be a couple
strictly
chapters and then
each part.
it retells the story in a different way.
yeah, it's not,
And that's what we're trying to do here is to help everyone see that so they can get a better grasp, on what the whole book is really trying to say.
yeah, I mean, it's not strictly each chapter, but if you think that the earthquake is kind of at the end of the story, we'll look at the references there. In Revelation
Yeah.
chapter 6, end of the story. Revelation chapter 8, end of the story.
Yeah.
Chapter 11, end of the story. Again in 16, end of the story.
Yeah.
So each time, it's like the Gospels. It's
Yeah.
telling the same thing over again from a different perspective. And I just kind of realized that
Right.
as we started going through it.
Even in 14, it has back-to-back stories of Christ with his sickle and he's reaping. Then he comes right around to say they're like grapes and he's ready for the cup of wrath.
Yeah.
But it's the same story, back-to-back, same event, just different pictures. Does that make sense?
It's not all chronology. In fact, the whole scriptures from Genesis to Revelation is not in order, not in sequence.
Right.
And that's
Revelation's the same way.
really valuable too if you're ever going through the major prophets or in the major and the minor prophets. I mean, is anybody else like me where you try to read through the Bible and you get to the prophets and you're like, man, I just want to skip this, I mean, it's kind of the same thing as Revelation. Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah telling the same story in a sense, different way.
Yeah, we're going through the minor prophets on Wednesday, and you guys, there's so much detail about the last days and about all this. It's, it's phenomenal.
Zechariah 14,
We'll come back.
4.
We'll go on.
Oh, about an earthquake.
Yeah.
On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will split in two from east to west, forming a great valley, with half of the mountain moving north and half moving south.
It's so clear. It's so clear. Okay.
A lot of scholars believe that's when the toe touches Mount Olive, everything will split.
Wow.
Yeah, now, what Clarence said there, now I do believe that the Bible teaches that when he returns, he doesn't land first directly on the Mount of Olives. I think if you read Habakkuk and some other Old Testament prophets, he does a second exodus and marches. He will even resplit the Red Sea again, it says in Isaiah 10, I believe. All right. Back to the verse 15, we're kind of backing up a little bit here. And then the seventh angel blew his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdom, now I want you to remember I mentioned this, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. When you go back to chapter 6, while it doesn't say this exactly, it says something very similar about him, reigning. All these different chapters towards the end, will say something to the effect like, it is done, it is finished, the Lord rules now. But here's the point here, is the angel, he blows the trumpet, loud voices in heaven, the kingdom has become the kingdom, and then he goes on to say, we give thanks to you, Lord God Almighty, who is and who was, for you have taken your great power and begun to reign. The nations raged. Now what I want you to do here is recognize this wording, this language. This comes right out of Psalms 2, and we're going to look at that in the next slide. But your wrath has come. So let's flip over to the next slide and just read Psalms 2, because this is one of my favorite. Why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together. Now, I believe the rulers are the supernatural beings that are against God and are like using the kings of the earth as puppets, and against the Lord and against his anointed one, saying, and these are the bad people, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away the cords from us. And then verse 4, and I added the word but here. He, God, who sits in the heaven laughs, and the Lord holds him in derision. I love that word derision. That's so good.
Can you give us the definition, please?
Derision?
Yeah.
He mocks them, you know,
Okay.
it's like, oh, whatever. You know. Didn't you ever watch Big Bang Theory? Sheldon, he's always laughing in derision, mocking. Verse 5, then he, God, will speak to them in his wrath. There it is, guys. And terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, that's God, I will set my king, that is my son, on Zion, my holy hill. And there's nothing you can do, guys. Nothing you can do to stop.
It's gonna be a great day.
Oh my
In other
God.
words,
Praise the
you
Lord.
can't quit fighting and just start praising.
Man.
But see, they can counsel, they can, you know, try to do what they're going to do with Israel and all that, but it's going to be nothing, because he's going to be like, at the last moment, like a rider on a white horse, come down and save the day, as they say. Clarence, you say?
I just,
Our hero in shining armor.
Mm-hmm.
off the subject, maybe a rabbit trail.
Yep.
I've heard in the news the last day so that our president was going to establish a Palestinian state. Someone said Israel. It made me think of it.
I
Is it-
said Israel.
Okay, has anyone heard this, or
Yeah.
is just yeah?
Yeah.
Is he's going? Is he's going
I've heard
to?
rumors of it. I haven't seen
Is he's
anything
going?
definite.
Okay, he's going to the Middle East next week. I just
That's the rumor.
okay. I just
Yeah.
wanted to double check. That's all. We can keep going.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'm glad he has a heart for him.
that is what's going to happen eventually, whether it's Trump or whatever.
Someone else.
But they're supposedly, you know, I think when you see, because it's a prophecy of Joel, I think Joel 2 or 3, where the land is divided. It says, and I think, you know, when you see Jerusalem divided like that, that's when it's going to all this stuff. Remember Daniel and Daniel 7 pops off. I mean, yeah, Daniel 9 pops off with the peace treaty for 7 years supposedly.
There's
So anyway,
a place where it talks about.
Oh, I'll be
against
watching the
those
news
who
this
fight.
week. If y'all see it,
What?
send it in the group.
What?
I want to know. All right.
All my life.
Two-state solution.
All right. And I've heard all these other
Finally
things.
happens, then
It might be the beginning.
Bring it on.
Bring it.
All right.
yeah.
Praise the Lord.
yeah. So the point is that you guys are now going to be prepared when you see the signs, and one of the big signs would be the temple being rebuilt. So keep an eye out for that as well in this agreement that they're talking about.
I've lived my entire life hearing about the Middle East and Israel, wondering why it's always in the news. This class brings that together,
Yeah.
especially this conversation we're having right now.
Heck, Genesis.
It's like,
Brings it.
It's literally the center of the world.
Yeah.
World peace depends on Israel.
yeah.
And this
Go
I mean,
figure.
you kind of know.
Because it's a
yeah,
land that
you
God
know
gave them.
Israel's center to the Bible, but you
Yeah.
don't really know all the details. But this is just bringing out all the
That's
details.
right.
of why and how and everything. And it's really illuminating.
Interesting. Yeah.
Remember the story about the thief in the night? Israel, God gave Israel that land. He didn't give it to anybody else.
Yeah.
In fact, he gave it into the time of Abraham.
Yeah.
And then it took Moses.
He gave it to
But see,
Abraham.
Isaac and Jacob didn't go in to claim it. And Moses brought his out. And then every time we turn away from God, what happens? There's a famine. There's always a famine. There's chaos. And God is just bringing this back. But why do they want? It's because God gave them that land. And they come in to steal what God gave them because they want God's provision.
Look, and the reason the devil is trying to do this is if he can either get rid of the Jews by slaughtering them or have the land taken over, God cannot fulfill his promises in his thinking.
Right.
So therefore, his plan has been thwarted, if you will. But that's just not gonna happen.
Right.
But that's the point why Israel's always in the news, because the devil is always trying to either kill them or get rid of the land.
Why is it not, we can believe a lie, but when we hear the truth, we gotta have hard evidence? Look, this is all we need right
Yeah,
now.
that's it.
All right, let's try to finish this up here. Yeah, Clarence, have a good one.
See you next week, gentlemen.
Clarence.
So in 11:19 we read, and this is the very last verse of 19. Then God's temple in heaven was open, and the ark of his covenant, which is the mercy seat, was seen within his temple. By who? There were flashes of lightning, rumbles, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and heavy hail, which we just read. So remember in 6:12 when it says, this is my question, is the heaven opened in the same as the sky that vanished as the scroll in 6:12? Remember how what it says there, how the sky vanished was rolled back as a scroll in 6? Could this be the same thing where the heaven is open and you see God's temple and the Ark of the Covenant? Now, obviously, the sky is not going to be literally gone, vanished. That's hyperbole, which we've talked about in here many times. Just wanted to throw that out there. See if you see that. And if you're paying it, of course, we've already talked about this, attention to the language and matching up other parts of Revelation. We should see that peals of thunder, the flashes of lightning, the rumblings, the earthquake. You can see how it all kind of goes together, which we've already discussed. So, any comments on any of that?
And it could be just talking about how it's going to look. So if you imagine looking up at the sky and suddenly it turns black as if you're rolling up a scroll.
Oh,
It's probably a word,
Yeah, and then
word picture.
and then it splits open, and you see God,
Exactly.
the heavens open, the Ark of the Covenant coming down as the second coming, the mercy seat, God. I don't know how it all looks. I'm just reading what it says, and that's the point. We're not trying to sit here and tell you, this is what that exact word means. We're not saying, we're just trying to understand the language, how they would have seen it. It's a word picture, it's a poetic thing kind of going on, but you can see clearly how they're using the same phrases, the same words in different parts to make you understand, I'm retelling the story, guys. I'm retelling the same story over and over and over. Very simple.
I sort of think it's the same concept, like where we can have a totally dark room. I can light a little tiny candle right here, and it's really bright. Then I'll turn on a light, and the light from the candle disappears, and all you see is this light. So I feel like when the heavens open, and I'm not even gonna say the heaven's gonna open. I'm just saying when you see the temple in heaven, it's gonna outshine everything. So you won't see the sky.
Whatever that physically looks like.
Correct.
Whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I think God's glory will outshine the sun, so the sun will be darkened.
Yeah.
Not that the sun disappears or goes behind a cloud. It's
That's why
gonna
you have a light that you turn a brighter light.
it's gonna just blast everything. It's all gonna disappear.
So lastly here in Isaiah, just want to show you that we do have something, a description here in Isaiah from the Old Testament regarding all this. The earth is utterly broken. The earth is split apart. The earth is violently shaking. Maybe that's a great earthquake. That's my parentheses. And the earth staggers like a drunken man, and it sways like a... You see how he's painting this word picture so you can understand what he's talking about? Now, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And its transgressions lies heavy upon it. And it falls, and it will not rise again. Again, that's a little hyperbole there, but then here's the key. On the day of the Lord, which is what we're talking about, will punish the host of heaven, those supernatural beings we keep talking about, and in heaven, but also the kings of the earth on the earth. And they will be gathered together as a prisoner in a pit, and they will be shut up in a prison, and after many days they will be punished. And I should have put that in parentheses, at the great white throne judgment, Revelation 20. I didn't put the parentheses there, but
I have a question.
you get the point. Go ahead.
And I know it's really late and you won't be able to get into it, but a simple yes or no, I guess, would suffice, and we can talk about it later. Are there two judgments? Is there the Bema Seat judgment of reward and the Great White Throne judgment after the 1,000 years?
I only think there's one judgment at the Great White Throne.
Whatever it is, you're gonna wanna be with God.
Get right, get other people right.
And then it won't really
You
matter.
know, that's our duty too. That's our duty too.
Because when we're resurrected, on the day of the Lord, when he comes back and we live with him 1,000 years here on earth, he already knows what, where we're going to be with him. So it's not like, I can't let you into the 1,000-year millennium until we go through this whole process of judging you. And the ones who are already judged, it says they wait till the end because they don't get resurrected on that day, but they will have their own resurrected bodies because at that time, at the end of the Revelation, it says they're thrown into the lake of fire. So they'll have their own resurrected body that can endure that.
What do you think?
Because if back all the discourse, Jesus says, I'm going to resurrect, I'm going to separate the lambs to my right and the goats to the left. He doesn't say, I'm going to separate the lambs to the right. And then later I'm going to come back and we're going to do the goats, right? He just does them all at once. You go over here and you go over here.
Yeah. And so I think this is the last slide. And when he had opened up the sixth seal, I looked and behold, this is back to chapter 6, there was a great earthquake. And the sun became black as sackcloth, the full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth as the fig tree sheds its winter fruit when it's shaken by a gale. And the sky vanished like a scroll that is being rolled up. So we kind of talked about that. And then the kings of the earth and the great ones and the generals and the rich and the powerful, all the slave free, hid themselves in caves and among the rocks, the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come. That's the unbeliever. And who can stand? The reason I put this up there is because we just talked about how we were reading there in 11 how it looks like the end of days, and I wanted to go back and show you in the sixth seal, like Travis was so elegantly pointing out to us, that the same thing, that he sees this pattern, and this again, there in chapter 6 with the seals, you already see, the end days, because there's the darkness, the clouds, we see that in chapter 8 before the earthquake. I'm just reiterating what the book is doing too. So
I saw on the news that some official was saying, oh yeah, we've been building underground barracks for the end of days for years now. So they are prepared. They have prepared already in their own man-made base.
But the answer to the question of who can stand is no one.
Right.
yep, that's the point.
Yeah. Just
So
so
you
you
take
take your bunker.
Yeah, it's our utility.
That's
correct. But they think it will.
Yeah.
think it will.
Yeah, well,
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
I really want to be underground.
Eric had a comment or a question real quick, and then we'll get out of here.
So this is all right at the beginning of the 1,000-year reign, right?
No.
This is at the end, the day of the Lord when he comes, and all judgment as far as like what it says about the Lord coming to avenge his people.
So
This is after the 1,000 years?
No,
No, it's beginning.
beginning.
This is at the fulfillment of Daniel 7.
Yeah.
So this is the beginning of the 1,000 years.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trumpet sound, sky separates, Son of Man descends, resurrects the dead.
And y'all go, oh.
Good.
All right, so next week we will do chapter 12. It's a break, if you will. where it's a little parentheses, an interlude. John switches, and it'll be fascinating and interesting how he looks at chapter 12, especially the first couple of verses, and you'll see why. And I'll probably send out a clue this week. But anyway, that's it. And I guess I'll close it with prayer real quick.